Anime was never supposed to survive the leap into reality. There's a reason most live-action anime adaptations feel like the cinematic equivalent of microwave ramen. Sure, it technically qualifies as food, but nobody's proud of it. Reality has rules. Anime does not. In anime, gravity is optional. Hair colour matters more than physics. And sword fighting, well, sword fighting tends to be more like choreographed lightning than anything tied to human anatomy. And yet, against all logic, against all historical evidence, against every misfire Hollywood has ever produced, one adaptation not only survived the jump, it thrived. The Rurouni Kenshin live-action films aren't just good for an anime adaptation, they're good period. They're widely regarded as the perfect adaptation, a title no other anime film series even comes close to challenging. The 5 films together form a complete cinematic saga where action, character, history, and emotion collide with improbable precision. But the real question is, why? Why these films? Why this story? Why did Kenshin succeed where every other adaptation tripped, face planted, and then politely asked the audience to pretend the last 90 minutes never existed? This is what we're here to explore. Because under the surface of gravity-defying swordplay and insanely sharp choreography is a story built on something far heavier. History, trauma, guilt, violence, redemption, and the struggle to live in a rapidly changing world. Kenshin Himura is a fictional character, yeah, but he's built out of the psychological, cultural, and political debris left behind one of the most turbulent eras in Japanese history. And that, more than the stunts, more than the visuals, more than the action direction, is why this adaptation works. So, sharpen your sakabato, stretch your editing timeline, and prepare your most dramatic voiceover. This is Rurouni Kenshin, the perfect adaptation. Before we talk about Kenshin the man, we need to talk about Kenshin the era, because Kenshin only makes sense if you understand the world that shaped him. The late Edo period, specifically the Bakumatsu, was a time when Japan faced a crisis so immense it forced the entire nation into an identity reboot. Picture it. A strict isolationist feudal system that had lasted over 250 years, a warrior class, the samurai, whose entire cultural purpose was evaporating, foreign powers knocking at the door with modern weapons, the economy crumbling, political legitimacy collapsing, and everyone arguing about what Japan should be. For the first time in centuries, the old answers weren't good enough. This is the world Kenshin grew up in. A world where violence wasn't just common, it was politically necessary. The series isn't subtle about this. Characters constantly reference the old regime and the new government as if the scars are still fresh, because in the 1870s, they were. Kenshin was a fictional member of the Isshin Shishi, the pro-imperial rebels who fought to overthrow the Tokugawa shogunate. Opposing them were the Shinsengumi, a real historical group of elite swordsmen who maintained order in Kyoto. In the Kenshin films, Kenshin is Isshin Shishi, an imperial loyalist assassin, and Saito Hajime is a Shinsengumi, a shogunate loyalist. These are not cartoon factions. These were the men who killed each other in the streets. Their ideological clash shaped modern Japan. The films use this dynamic not as trivia, but as emotional weight. When Kenshin and Saito clash in the 2012 film, the air between them feels heavy. Not because they're rivals, but because they are historical ghosts still fighting a war that's already ended. This is why the themes feel believable. These characters aren't swinging swords for shonen hype, they're embodying the unresolved trauma of an entire nation. As the shogunate fell, the new Meiji government embarked on an insanely rapid modernization campaign. Western clothing, education, military, law, industrialization, railroads, firearms, and most importantly, the abolition of the samurai class. Imagine waking up one day and finding out your job, your culture, your hair, your sword, and your entire family lineage are now irrelevant. This is why the Kenshin story works in live action, because Kenshin himself is a metaphor for Japan, a warrior trying to figure out how to live in a world that no longer needs warriors. He is caught between eras, between identities, between violence and peace, between his past and his future. This isn't just a story, it's a cultural wound personified, and that wound becomes the thematic backbone of the films. Now we arrive at the beating heart of the Kenshin films, atonement. Not the shallow anime redemption arc type when someone apologizes and everything is fine. No, Kenshin is dealing with the kind of moral injury that cannot be erased. To understand this, we need to understand the two halves of Kenshin. The Batosai, the assassin who killed for political progress, and then Kenshin Himura, the wanderer who vows never to kill again. But this transformation isn't simply symbolic. It's psychological. It's rooted in trauma, guilt, and Japan's historical transition into modernity. Let's start with the vow itself. The iconic, "I will not kill." In many anime stories, pacifism is idealistic. In Kenshin, it's survival. It's psychological armor. Kenshin doesn't stop killing because he suddenly becomes a saint. He stops because the killing is killing him. Every time he assassinates someone, every time he swings his blade, every time he hears the wet impact of steel slicing flesh, he loses another piece of himself. His vow is the only thing keeping him from self-destruction. This is why the films treat the vow with such seriousness. In the 2012 film, early in the Kanryu mansion fight, Kenshin's movements are precise but controlled, disabling, not ending. The guilt is visible in Sato's eyes every time his blade connects. This restraint is not weakness, it's discipline forged through trauma. One of the most brilliant decisions Keishi Otomo made was portraying the Batosai not as Kenshin's true self, but as a persona, a mask worn by a child soldier caught in a political storm. In the beginning, from 2021, this becomes explicit. Kenshin kills not with passion, but with emptiness. He is a teenager moulded into a weapon. He is terrifying not because he wants to kill, but because he doesn't care whether he lives or dies. This makes the vow not just noble, but necessary. Kenshin is not redeeming himself, he is rebuilding himself. This is why the vow works, why it feels believable, and why it resonates. Because it's rooted in trauma, memory, and survival, not idealism. To understand the weight of Kenshin's redemption, you must understand Tomoe. Tomoe is the emotional spine of the entire saga. Her presence haunts every film, but when she is not mentioned, she is felt. Her death in the beginning is not just a tragic love story, it's the defining trauma that sets Kenshin on his path. The films portray her not as a manic pixie redemption device, but as a human being shaped by grief, conflict, and impossible choices. Tomoe is the embodiment of the theme, violence always leaves a shadow. Her presence turns Kenshin's vow into something rooted in lived sorrow, not abstract morality. What makes the Kenshin films so shockingly effective is that the characters' emotional arcs align with real historical trends. Kenshin, the former assassin, grappled with guilt. Kaoru, trying to rebuild tradition in a modernizing world. Saito, loyal to the old ways, but adapting to modern law enforcement. Shishio, the rage of those betrayed by the new government, and Anishi, the personal consequences of political violence. These aren't anime character motivations, they are grounded in political upheaval, emotional trauma, and societal transformation. That's why the Kenshin films feel real, because they are rooted in the emotional truth of an era. Now that we've established the historical and thematic backbone, it's time to dive into the films themselves. Because each of the 5 Rurouni Kenshin movies accomplishes something different, emotionally, cinematically, and narratively. And the genius is that each one feels distinct, yet part of a unified whole, like 5 chapters of one enormous film. The first film in the series had an almost impossible job. Introduce Kenshin, establish his vow, build his world, bring in key characters, create a complete narrative, and convince an audience burned by bad adaptations that this one would be different. Somehow, it does all of that and sets the tone for the entire saga. Now, why does that work? Otomo avoids anime exaggeration. No wild hair colours, no oversized costumes, no CG blood fountains. Everything is grounded in real fabric, real dirt, real heat, real blade impact. The palette is earthy, the performances are restrained, and the world feels lived in. This is a beautiful moment early in the film. Kenshin, after defeating thugs, looks at the unconscious bodies around him, not proud, not smug, just relieved that they're alive. Sato plays Kenshin with a softness that immediately differentiates him from typical samurai leads. He's small, quiet, gentle, but the moment danger appears, the Batosai reflexes snap into place. Subtle, instinctual shifts in his stance, eye movement, and grip. Even now, this scene remains one of the greatest statement pieces in modern action cinema. This single fight says, this is how you adapt anime action into live action correctly. Wide shots, clear geography, rhythm, momentum, human speed turned cinematic, not superhuman. The reverse blade sword is not a gimmick, it's the physical embodiment of Kenshin's trauma and vow. In this first film, the Sakabato feels like a character, sometimes a burden, sometimes a shield, sometimes a reminder of the monster Kenshin refuses to be. The Shishio arc is the backbone of the Rurouni Kenshin mythos. It's where everything escalates. These 2 films, released just months apart, are the franchise's grand epic. If the first film is an intimate portrait, then these 2 are the full-scale war. We've got a proper villain who has some weight. Shishio Makoto is a perfect foil. Where Kenshin was used by the new government and discarded, Shishio was betrayed by that same government, burned alive, and left for dead after being deemed inconvenient. So where Kenshin's vow is rooted in trauma, Shishio's violence is rooted in revenge against the system that made him. He is the anger of the forgotten era, a walking metaphor for the cruelty of modernization. Unlike many anime arcs, the Shishio conflict isn't just about fighting a strong dude, it's about the fragility of the Meiji government, a government that fears the monsters it created. Shishio exposes the hypocrisy of the new regime, which makes him more than a villain. He is an indictment. One of the most brilliant fights in the entire saga is Kenshin versus Sojiro, because Sojiro represents a young Kenshin, a child weapon shaped by violence. He smiles to survive, he kills because that's all he's ever known. The film doesn't spell this out, but the choreography does. Sojiro moves with weightless efficiency, Kenshin fights with restraint. The clash becomes a battle between instinct and intention. When Kenshin breaks Sojiro's sword, it's symbolic, breaking the identity forged by Shishio. Kenshin, Saito, Sanosuke, Aoshi and Shishio. A 5-way duel this ambitious shouldn't work, but it does, because this isn't a fight for power, it's a fight for ideology. Shishio burns up in the end, not because of Kenshin, but because his hatred is quite literally killing him. An anime moment? Yeah, but the film grounds it in the logic of his ruined body. He becomes a martyr to his own rage. That's cinema. After nearly a decade away, the series returned with The Final, and it brought with it the most personal villain in the saga. Inishi is not a symbolic villain. He is not a political villain. He is not an ideological villain. He is a consequence. The films treat him not as evil, but as emotionally wounded. His obsession with Jinshu, human punishment, is a culturally grounded idea. Not legal justice, but emotional retribution. Inishi wants Kenshin to feel what he felt. The loss of Tomoe shattered him, and now he wants Kenshin's heart to shatter too. This makes the conflict authentic, personal, tragic. The manga version of this arc is huge, unfilmable as is, so the movie focuses the story into a tighter emotional core. Kenshin confronting the consequences of the person he used to be. It blends action, grief, forgiveness, generational trauma, and the impossibility of amending the past. And the final Kenshin vs Inishi fight? Whoo! Boy, it's a masterclass in emotional choreography. Kenshin is not trying to overpower Inishi, he's trying to reach him, to connect, to atone. Every dodge feels like regret, every strike feels like a message, and when Inishi breaks down, screaming, the acting is raw, ugly, human. This is not anime drama, this is grief turned physical. If the first 4 films are redemption, this one is the wound. The beginning is not a samurai action film. It's a tragedy, a slow burn, character-driven grief story that deconstructs the myth of the Batasai. And here's why the beginning is a masterpiece. Cinematic language shift. The colour palette is colder, the frame is calmer, the action is slower, sharper, and more grounded. Kenshin is no longer gentle. He is efficient, detached, terrifying. Tomoe is treated with respect. She is not a plot device. She is her own character, complex, introspective, grieving, intelligent, and conflicted. Her romance with Kenshin feels real because it emerges out of silence, observation, and small gestures. And then the final scene, the snow duel, the accidental killing, the scar. This is not melodrama, it is elegy, a requiem. When Kenshin holds Tomoe in the snowfall, it feels like the death of a person, not a trope.